Hello everyone, and welcome to Deckbuilding Derezzed. I'm your host, Code Marvelous, and today I am joined by Dan, otherwise known as Korporate, from the Portland meta. Thank you very much for being on the show, Dan.
Hey, how's it going, Dan?
Pretty good, pretty good. I brought Dan on the show today because he made a very interesting deck. Now, of course, interesting by my standards. He made an Edward Kim deck that aims to leverage his ability in a meta that has a lot of high-value operations. So, Dan, why don't you talk a little bit about how you came to this identity in this build and, talk to me about the generation of this deck a little bit.
Sure. So I have always played Edward Kim as trying to get him to work. I would always show up to store champs and things, and people would be like, "Why are you running Kim instead of Wizard?" I like winning games as Wizard, but I just wanted to try to play something different, and that something that would kind of shake things up.
Right.
I think also, more to the point, the way the meta is kind of shifting is it's this weird balance between this kind of two sides of the Anarch coin. And you have Wizard on one hand, and to counteract that, we have people playing like 24/7 and CI builds now, which try to turn off Wizard as much as they can, and in the same way, just enable Kim to get his hammer on.
Yeah. I mean, also, Kim is just great if you want to be, shredded, ridiculously shredded.
Yeah.
For no discernible reason, considering he would have to have a prosthetic to be able to lift with that arm, I think, or put, a strap on it.
I think the best hacking device is literally just a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
So you don't have to even,
Right.
No hacking involved.
Right, but it's like the Gabe problem, where it's just when you shoot people, it's not hacking, it's called aggravated assault. But yeah, so I'm a big fan of Kim. I think his ability the stock in his ability has been rising lately. There's just so many, even in asset decks, right? Friends in High Places is such a crucial event right now for a lot of the Corp games. So I think it's a good pick. Let's take a look at what you did here and see, how the deck shapes up to leverage his ability. Where do you want to start?
Sure. So I think it's not really that revolutionary of a deck. I think it comes with a lot of the same build principles that you'd find in a traditional non-Cipher Anarch build.
I think that's fair.
So you're running the 3 Temujin for the early start.
I hear it's really good.
Yeah, I think it's a little underplayed right now.
Yeah.
I wish more people were playing Temujin.
Yeah.
But it's one of those cards that you get it out turn 1, put it on archives, and it sets you up for the rest of the early game.
Yeah, it's incredible. How about I sure gamble 2 times on my first turn, basically.
Yep, and then honestly, if they ice up archives on click, the next turn, you just face check it, and if they res it, then they're wasting money to res and ice on archives.
Yep.
So,
right.
Win-win. You've got the double slums, which I think is kind of necessary.
Yes.
In this meta, you don't have the wizard ability, so you can't kind of do it with impunity.
Well, strangely enough, I think that slums is more important in non-wizard builds, because with all of the recursion, anytime you do trash an asset, you need it to go away forever because you're not wizard.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think there's, being Anarch, you should, having the ability to run slums without influence cost is just a huge, huge bonus right now.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yep. Yeah, taking out the assembly lines, taking out whatever, turns off a lot of combos.
Yep.
That's kind of what this deck is all about doing. It's just turning off combos and making people play Netrunner.
Yeah, seems good. We've got a single Bagat, or is it Bagat?
I don't know what he is, but he is awesome. This deck does run 46 cards, which I've tried to narrow down, and like find the 46th, but I don't know where that is. And I've thought about cutting Begot before, but I immediately changed my mind after doing so.
Yeah.
Just because his power is so strong.
And for those of you who may not be familiar with the card, because it saw a little bit of play when it came out, but it hasn't seen a ton of play. The first time you make a successful run on HQ each turn, force the Corp to trash the top card of R&D. It's pretty damn good, because I hear if you're Edward Kim and you're trying to destroy operations, HQ is where it's at.
Yeah, you hit the centrals, you hit HQ, you hit R&D, and having a singleton Begot, it's not, you're not going to see him every game, but in the games that run long, you will see him, and when you do, it lets you get a headlock on HQ the same way you can get a headlock on R&D, which
it's good.
It's a nice addition.
We got 3 daily casts.
Yep. So
really good card.
The whole resource build basically runs off the same kind of traditional career fair economy. So you're running 2 career fair to get all these kind of expensive resources down. Getting a career fair daily cast is basically just like getting 8 free credits. So solid.
Earthrise Hotel, also feeding into the career fair clickless economy.
Yep. That you only have 2 of those because the engine of the deck does run off inject, but it does definitely add clickless draw.
Yeah,
which is great when you want to run every turn.
Absolutely. Only 2 liberated as opposed to 3.
Yeah, you could go to 3. Again, it's one of those things like where do you cut cards, and it's a deck space kind of thing.
Right.
I don't think you ever don't want money.
Yeah, money's pretty good in this game, I hear.
Yep, especially in this meta.
I was gonna say, especially if you're orange.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty solid. And then we have a single same old thing.
Yep.
Not surprising.
Nope, it's the kind of levy build. Have your same old thing. If you're worried about it getting trashed against like a Jinteki or like a PU or something, you just make sure you have your same old thing on the table and you can run with impunity. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got 2 obelisks.
Yeah, so the console selection, I like Obelisk even without the Hades Shard kind of interaction. I mean, if you could find influence in this for a Hades Shard kind of thing, I think it would work. But, I mean, you're not running Account Siphon.
Do you want to briefly explain what that is so people understand it?
Yeah, so there's this really weird interaction between Hades Shard and Obelisk. What Obelisk says is when you run HQ or R&D, at the end of the successful turn, you draw a card for each card that you've accessed. And Hades Shard, when you pop it, it's a clickless ability that lets you access all cards in archives. So you can basically draw everything out of archives at once. And a lot of people at Worlds 2016 were kind of running this Hate Bear, draw 25 cards in one go kind of build, and then Account Siphon spam them into
Oblivion, yeah.
But even without that, I think this deck, or this card, is really strong, especially when you're going with Kim, who wants operations, and operations live in HQ and R&D, which is exactly where this triggers.
Yeah.
And it's also great when people try to defend it with like a Cyberdex or any kind of upgrade, because then it gives you that second extra draw.
Right.
In any of those places.
It's kind of interesting because Obelisk has almost a Desperado type feel to it, where, it's rewarding you with usually one click's action.
Yeah.
As a reward for making a run.
Yep. But on very specific servers, which I think is also why it works really well with Kim.
I agree. So, where do you want to go next?
We just go with, I guess, the Breaker Suite and then also Inject.
Okay.
So now that we have the full Conspiracy Suite, I think decks like this kind of work better than they did before. They're not the most cost-effective breakers, but they do enable you to, there are a lot of that I've seen that kind of just use this whole install from heap interaction to fuel economies.
Yeah.
So I've seen it in like those what's the guy, the shaper that you can install from whenever he installs cards from his heap?
Exile.
Exile cards. Yeah, like you could do fun things with them. I think just having all three of them in criminal and running inject,
Or in Anarch.
or sorry, in Anarch, lets you draw through and not have to worry about wasting your deja vus to get your breakers back.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, also, I feel like for this cycle, they were just like, Adam Doyle, are you doing anything? Can you just make, like, 15 cards for us?
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. I love the theme, too. It's a great, yeah. If they held up this theme in other places, I'd really like the whole corp versus runner, you know.
Like, active anarchy, like, destabilization of society. Like, well, I think one of the interesting things about the Conspiracy Breakers and Omar, obviously, who they come from, is that basically there's this idea that, like, Omar's always been around, but people are actually listening to him because all this crazy crap's going on. So he's like, you see, I was right all along, and now he's actually, like, a famous hacker. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Instead of that lone guy with a blog. You know what I'm saying? Like,
he's always been there. Behind the scenes, no one's been watching, and yeah.
Yeah. But no, I love the Conspiracy Breakers. They fill a lot of holes in some Shaper decks, but also, as you mentioned, in a lot of Anarch decks. They take the stress out of using Inject. Or overdrawing in general.
Yeah, and I think they're not great against certain matchups. So like Black Orchestra and DNA Tracker are like the two.
It's like nightmarish.
Yeah, it's not going to get you through a DNA Tracker more than once, and even then you're going to want to, punch the wall. But let's say like a Lotus Field, it is great against Lotus Field, which is traditionally another piece of ice that Anarch has struggled against.
And it's popular right now.
Yeah, and now that Cipher's coming back, I really think like Black Orchestra does have a place. Even just for breaking those low strength code gates.
Yeah, it's certainly not bad, and yeah, it's
and
good.
In the same way, so the MK Ultra. The other thing that I really like about that is against HB, it lets you run really aggressively because once you have one in the trash, and assuming they don't arc lock down it, which I guess is coming back, but. You can basically just face check architects all day and not care. It's still like
not great. It's still expensive.
No, it is $3 to break an architect, which is just one more than a mimic.
Well, I was referencing the like when you hit it by surprise, the initial upfront cost is $5.
Yeah, it's $5, but I think the benefit that you get from installing it. Right, like the first time you break an architect with a mimic, it's also $5, and it's $5,
true.
And it's $5 the first time you do it. So it requires a click and $5, whereas when you install it an MK Ultra and break an architect, it's only $5, which lets you do really aggressive things against HB, which I think is really important now for shutting them down.
I agree, and Clippy's incredible. Just in a general sense. And it gives you access to Clippy jokes.
Yeah.
So there's an added bonus there. So we've got a single David, because as you already mentioned, we're not running Cypher, so we need a way to deal with really big ice.
Yeah. And David will get you through something once. Really, this deck doesn't handle big ice well. But I don't think in a Cipher meta that there's going to be that much big ice.
I think that's fair.
I think you have certain decks that like running the big stuff, but when you can just make it 0, I don't know. It's
good.
Interesting. Yep, it's solid.
We got 2 Data Sucker. Probably one of my favorite cards in all of Netrunner.
Uh, favorite as in, yeah, also a solid card.
It's a solid design. No, I mean all around. It's a solid design. It supports strategy, the Anarch strategy well. It's thematic.
Hmm.
Like the more you enter into the central servers, the more you learn about their infrastructure. So the weaker their ice gets.
Yep. And I think it's a good card, not only to help with the Breaker Suite, but also to let you play the Parasite game. You're not insta speed destroying things with Parasite, and that you are with a Cipher deck, but at least it lets you build up some counters and actually pressure Ice Res.
Yeah, we got two mediums. Really
Yep.
good. Don't need to belabor this too much.
Nope. Locking down R&D.
Yep. And then three parasites. This is actually my favorite Netrunner card.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how like uh, I guess
It was way worse in the core set. Let's
yeah,
put it that way. It's
yeah.
gotten its stock has risen considerably over the years.
Yep, I guess when you needed to use a worm to get it to work, it didn't work that great. But now now it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So that's the program suite. It's pretty lean and mean, very, good stuff Anarch kind of feel, but with the conspiracy breakers.
Yep, and you're also running two Deja Vu. So with the inject economy, like you literally every time you see an inject, like click one, always inject.
Yeah.
And then you use your Deja Vus to get back key pieces or multiple viruses if you can.
Yeah. You gotta do Via Con Dios.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So as far as ops or events, we got two career fairs which we've already discussed. Helps accelerate the economy and get things out of your hand early.
Yep.
Deja Vu is really good for Anarch. Like so good. It's amazing to me when we think about how when did you start playing Netrunner?
I guess I started after what was uh the criminal
Honor and
Jinteki.
Profit.
That was Honor and Profit. Yeah, right after Honor and Profit.
Okay, so you've been in it since back when Anarchs were just bad and like no one played them. And
Yeah.
there's so many incredible Anarch cards that are from the core set, but just haven't like the pieces didn't gel until Order and Chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause like Deja Vu is an incredible card, Data Sucker's an incredible card, Parasite's an incredible card. Like but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but the influence cost on their breakers was so low, right? Like the corroder, you're better off just like putting a Yogg in criminal, and that was like your like the Anarch suite. Even though the Anarchs weren't number one, their suite was still really strong.
Oh yeah. No, like when I built my my professor deck, the newer one, that isn't Baba Yaga based, I remember I was just like, well, in case we needed any more proof that Anarch programs are good, 24 of my 26 influence in this deck is orange programs.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've got three I've had worse. I imagine since we're running Obelisk, this can help keep us alive.
Yeah, it works in certain matchups. In others, literally every time I picked it up, I use it for draw.
Right.
It's
also thematic.
Also, if you're running Edward Kim, you have to run three I've had worse, just for sheer flavor.
Yeah. We've got three injects. It's the primary draw engine, I imagine. Speak a little bit to me about, obviously you mentioned already that if you have it early, you're going to use it. Explain to me a situation where you would do a board read and decide not to use it.
So a lot of times I wouldn't use an inject when your hand is already full and you run the risk of drawing like a bunch of resources and that you just like can't dump them all.
Okay.
It's also not running Faust. So it's not like you're using the inject to draw things to your hand for like a massive Faust run or something like that. So it doesn't matter that much, but in terms of when you'd want to draw the cards, I usually just like drawing them at the beginning of the turn. So if you can use it click 1 or click 2 and then like design your turn accordingly, then it's better than doing it at the end of your turn and like injecting, let's say, a parasite that goes into the heap and then it gets, arc lockdown or something.
Right.
At least you have like 3 clicks or 2 clicks to do something with them.
And that's an important point. Much in the same way that with Jackson, with rumor mill being a thing, corporations are being preemptive with their Jacksons. Mm-hmm. I have found in my Anarch games now, I'm being proactive about deja vuing like parasites back to my hand.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Arc Lockdown definitely has a place, especially with the Cipher stuff. If you can knock out a couple parasites from a Cipher deck, then I've found it struggles a little bit.
Yeah.
And like when it goes all in on the breaking, the trashing of the ice.
We have a Singleton Levy.
Yep.
How often are you finding yourself needing to levy?
In most games, I don't. In most games, I see the levy and I kind of cringe to myself. So it's like, I don't know. A lot of people have not stopped running levy in a lot of decks, which I think makes some sense. But then when you start doing that, then decks like PU can come up and just
make you have a really bad time.
Yeah, just make you hate life again. So I've always kind of kept it in as a safety blanket. I don't think it's a necessary piece of the deck in the same way that something else is. But I've it's really really match dependent, and a lot of times
that's fair.
You see the levy and you're fine throwing it in the trash.
Right, that's fair. So we have 2 rumor mills. I hear this is still a really good card, even though some people have forgotten about it.
Yeah, it's pretty strong. I think it also doubles down on the CI
hatred.
CI hatred, or the 24/7 hatred. Just because you can turn off Jacksons and turn off, like, when you have like a when you employ strike a CI, they can just play like an enforced curfew or something to turn it off. But they also have the option of just starting a combo and just, comboing out to turn off the current in a way that you can't do it with rumor mill.
Right, because the Jacksons are blank, you can't make your piles.
So I think I don't know. There's still a lot of debate between the employee strike rumor mill kind of and there are arguments for both, but I still like rumor mill.
Well, I think rumor mill also feeds into the type of play that you're making here, where you're saying no, you can't Jackson those operations back.
Yeah,
you need to score while I'm destroying all your tools before you can get your tools back.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a great lockdown tool.
Yep. And we got sure gambles. I hear money is really good in this game.
Yep. Unless you're doing some interesting build, there's always the sure gambles.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the deck. It's pretty lean and mean. And it's pretty straightforward, at least from a build perspective, what it's trying to do. And, but I'm excited to go over some of the lines of play with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so everybody watching, you can find Dan online. He goes by Korporate with a K on Netrunner DB and also the StimHack forums. Thank you very much, man, for coming on the channel.
Yep, absolutely. Great for having me. Thanks for bringing me on.
No problem. And we'll see you all in the test run. And until we see you there, always be running.